What's going on, everyone? Today we are ranking the top 10 Disney Pixar films. If you're interested in seeing the full rankings of every single Pixar film, stay tuned until the end of the video to find out how you can see our list of all 26 movies. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoy it and subscribe to this channel with that notification bell on so you don't miss a video. Lastly, we'll be selecting one person's comment for an upcoming Today's Rankings video, so be sure to comment down below what you want to see us rank next. Enough talk, let's do this. Number 10, Coco. Released on November 22nd, 2017, Coco is Pixar's 19th feature film and was directed by Lee Unkrich, who also directed Toy Story 3. Coco follows the story of Miguel, a 12-year-old boy who absolutely loves music. However, Miguel also comes from a family who despise music and believe they are cursed by it because Miguel's great-great-grandfather left his wife to chase his dream of becoming a musician. The film does many things well, but what it does perhaps better than any other Pixar film is its incorporation of an incredible musical element. Not only is the music from Coco fun to listen to, but it is a key theme of the story and even used to further the plot of the story, something that Pixar movies aren't commonly known for doing, unlike the classic Disney movies. While it does include magical elements, such as the Land of the Dead, Coco is also primarily grounded in the realism of a story about a boy, his relationships with his family members, and his passion for music. Following the overwhelming success of Pixar in the late 90s and on through the 2000s, Coco debuted during a time when many were questioning if Pixar would ever return to making movies reminiscent of its many first films from the years before. Coco in many ways showed that Pixar wasn't going anywhere. I personally find it to be the best original story Pixar has created since Up in 2009. Number 9, Ratatouille. Released on June 29, 2007, Ratatouille is Pixar's 8th feature film and was directed by Brad Bird, who also directed The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2. Ratatouille is the story of a rat named Remy living in Paris, who, more than anything, wants to be a chef. There is, however, an obvious problem. He's a rat. In many ways, Ratatouille follows a similar formula to Coco in that the main character is inspired to pursue their dreams by a well-known expert in the field that others around them say is not a suitable dream to follow. In this case, that expert for Remy was the late Auguste Gusteau, France's most famous chef. Remy eventually teams up with restaurant dishwasher Alfredo Linguini, whose name I definitely did not identify as a double pasta pun as a kid. Ultimately, Remy and Linguini join forces with Remy as the culinary genius to form the finest cooking team in Paris, impressing the likes of famous food critic Anton Ego with a delicious ratatouille dish. Ratatouille is simply a fun movie that would also be fair to say is one of Pixar's most criminally underrated movies. What stands out perhaps the most from Ratatouille, apart from the story of Remy and his desire to follow his culinary dreams, is the endearing relationship between Remy and Linguini, who are both outsiders in their own right, but come together to form an unspoken bond that is the driving force of this movie. This alone will always bring me back to this film and helps to land it a spot at number 9 on this list. Number 8, Monsters, Inc. Released on November 2nd, 2001, Monsters, Inc. is Pixar's 4th feature film and was directed by Pete Docter, who would go on to also direct several other Pixar films, including Up, Inside Out, and Soul. Monsters, Inc. is centered on the story of James P. Sullivan, also known as Sully, the best scarer in the business, and his assistant and best friend, Mike Wazowski. They both work for the power company of Monstropolis, which uses children's screams as the main source of power. Sully unintentionally brings Boo, a human child, back to Monstropolis from the human world. Along with the help of his best friend Mike, they decide that they must find a way to get her back home. During the process, they uncover an evil scheme planned by Randall, the company's second best scarer, and the head of the company, Mr. Waternoose, who both eventually get what they deserve. Believe it or not, Monsters, Inc. is the first movie that I have a memory of seeing in the movie theaters, so this one holds a special place for me. The relationship between Sully and Mike is of course the lifeblood of this movie, but it is the development of the relationship between Sully and Boo that wins over the hearts of audiences. It also contains a more subtle message that we don't need to fear the things that frighten us when we face them, and in Boo's case, befriend them. Lastly, we learn that laughter is much more powerful than screams. I think this runs contrary to the old adage that it takes more energy to frown than to smile, but you get the point. Number 7, Cars. Released on June 9, 2006, Cars is Pixar's 7th feature film and was directed by John Lasseter, who also directed the first 3 Pixar films, Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and Toy Story 2. He also directed Cars 2, but we don't talk about that. Cars tells the story of Lightning McQueen, a rookie race car with a bit of an arrogant side. After ignoring his pit crew's warnings, Lightning ties with the King and Chick Hicks, forcing a tiebreaker race for the Piston Cup. On the way to the tiebreaker race, Lightning is separated from his transport truck Mac and ends up in Radiator Springs, a small town on Route 66 where he's taken to traffic court and forced to fix the town's main road. In what is initially an annoyance for Lightning, he grows to love the town and its cars. With the support of the folks he meets in the town, Lightning heads to the tiebreaker race where he allows Chick to win the race only after Chick sideswiped the King in a dirty move. Rather than taking the easy victory, Lightning then pushes the King across the finish line. Following the race, he returns to Radiator Springs, establishing his racing headquarters there, helping to revive the town in the process. I think it may be fair to say that Cars is probably one of the more surprising films on this list, but the story of Lightning McQueen and the folks of Radiator Springs is one that should deservedly hold a spot. The transformation of Lightning McQueen's character is the focus of this film, as the viewer witnesses the journey firsthand from arrogance to humility. During his time in Radiator Springs, he learns something or is helped in some way by each of the town's cars, particularly Sally, Mater, and Doc. In the end, Lightning learned one of life's more valuable lessons, that there is more to life than just winning. It's also worth mentioning that the Cars soundtrack has some of the more memorable music of Pixar films, with both Real Gone and, of course, Life is a Highway. Number 6. Toy Story 3. Released on June 18, 2010, Toy Story 3 is Pixar's 11th feature film and was directed by Lee Unkrich, who, as was mentioned earlier in the video, also directed Coco. The third installment of the Toy Story franchise is set 10 years after the events of Toy Story 2, and Andy is getting ready to leave for college. Rather than risk being stored in the attic, or even worse, thrown away, the toys decide to give being donated to Sunnyside Daycare a chance. The leader of the daycare, Lotso, welcomes Andy's toys, minus Woody, who, while attempting to return to Andy, is taken to the home of Bonnie and meets her toys there. The toys at Sunnyside learn it's not all it's cracked up to be, and Lotso is not the kind and lovable leader they thought he was. Woody also learns this from the toys at Bonnie's and goes to rescue his friends. After an attempted escape and a confrontation with Lotso, the toys find themselves at a landfill. Ultimately, the toys are rescued, and Lotso finds himself stuck to the front of a garbage truck. In what is unquestionably the most tear-inducing scene in Pixar history, the film concludes with Andy passing on his toys to Bonnie and reminiscing on all his memories. For many of us who grew up with Toy Story, it was hard not to see ourselves in Andy as he comes to terms with letting go and allowing Bonnie to share in the joy that his toys had given him. Prior to the decision to make the 4th Toy Story, the 3rd film in the franchise brought everything to such a bittersweet yet beautiful ending. Oftentimes, there is a worry that a sequel will ruin a classic movie. Pixar has definitely had its fair share of those. However, Toy Story 3 is not one of those films. Toy Story 3 was also the first Pixar film to gross over $1 billion at the box office, and is still only one of 4 Pixar movies to earn that achievement. Number 5. Finding Nemo. Released on May 30th, 2003, Finding Nemo is Pixar's 5th feature film and was directed by Andrew Stanton, who would also direct WALL-E as well as Finding Dory. Similar to one of its Pixar predecessors, Toy Story 2, Finding Nemo takes a parallel story arcs approach. One story is of course that of Nemo, who is captured by a diver and taken to live in a tank in a dentist's office. The other storyline and driving force of the plot is that of Marlin, Nemo's father, and the lovable blue fish, Dory. Marlin would go to the end of the ocean to find his son, and along with Dory go on an adventure rescue mission of a lifetime, encountering the likes of vicious sharks, a hungry anglerfish, painful jellyfish, righteous sea turtles, a massive whale, and of course, annoying seagulls. During their search, Nemo has meanwhile become close with many of the fish in the dentist's office tank, and they have collectively devised a plan to allow the tank's fish, Nemo included, to reach the ocean. Eventually, Marlin and Nemo are reunited and come to an understanding, with Marlin being very evidently more confident and trusting of his son. The unending love between a father and son is a major driving force of the film, but the unquestionable catalyst for this force is Dory. One of the absolute best comedic characters in Pixar history, over the course of the journey, she, oftentimes unintentionally, allows Marlin to realize things about himself that reshape his view and later allow him to become a more empathetic and trusting father towards Nemo. At the time of its release, Finding Nemo would go on to become the 8th highest grossing film of all time, and even won the Academy Award in 2003 for Best Animated Feature. Number 4. The Incredibles. Released on November 5th, 2004, The Incredibles is Pixar's 6th feature film and was directed by Brad Bird, who would also go on to direct Ratatouille and The Incredibles 2. Our story begins when superheroes are forced to hide their powers due to the public backlash against them. 15 years later, Bob and Helen, formerly Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, have 3 kids, Violet, Dash, and Jack Jack. Living a seemingly normal life, that all changes when a mysterious woman named Mirage delivers a message asking Mr. Incredible to help defeat a giant robot called an Omnidroid. Mr. Incredible eventually learns that it has all been a ploy to lure him to the island by Syndrome, a former young fan of Mr. Incredible's who is embarrassed by him after wanting to be his sidekick. While Bob is uncovering Syndrome's plan, Helen, along with Violet and Dash, travel to the island after receiving some fancy new supersuits designed by Edna Mode. The family of supers is unable to defeat Syndrome on the island, but re-engage in an epic finale in the city of Metroville, and along with the help of fellow super and Bob's best friend Lucius, also known as Frozone, the family is able to defeat the Omnidroid and subdue Syndrome. In one final dastardly deed, Syndrome kidnaps Jack Jack. However, his plans are thwarted once again when it's revealed Jack Jack has transformative powers, causing Syndrome to release Jack Jack into the arms of the family below and leads to Syndrome's demise in an aircraft turbine. A seemingly not-so-normal Incredible family wins over our hearts. We can also take away many lessons from The Incredibles. Family comes first, the importance of honesty, the willingness to take risks, and the transformation of weaknesses into strengths, particularly in the case of Violet. This is one of the most beloved Pixar films, and is evident when we examine the success of its successor, The Incredibles 2, which due to so much love for the original film and anticipation for the second, would go on to become the highest grossing Pixar movie of all time. Number 3. Toy Story. Released on November 22nd, 1995, Toy Story is the first feature film Pixar ever created and was directed by John Lasseter, who, as we mentioned earlier in the video, also would go on to direct A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, and the first 2 Cars films. Woody, voiced by Tom Hanks, is the leader of a group of toys that belong to Andy. During Andy's birthday, the toys are nervous Andy will receive a cool new toy that replaces them. Woody's worst fears are realized when Andy receives a brand new Buzz Lightyear. Voiced by Tim Allen, Buzz creates a jealousy within Woody, especially when Andy replaces his cowboy-themed room with space decorations instead. Woody tries to sabotage Buzz, but ends up accidentally pushing him out of a window, causing the rest of Andy's toys to turn on him just before Andy rescues Woody by choosing him for a trip. Woody finds that Buzz is also in the family van, and eventually, after an adventure in Pizza Planet, the two wind up in the hands of Sid Phillips, the boy next door known for destroying toys. During their time at Sid's, Buzz comes to the sad realization that he is not a real space ranger and simply a toy. Woody and Buzz have a heart-to-heart, and Woody is able to convince Buzz that being a toy is the best thing in the world. Sid later straps Buzz to a rocket, and Woody teams up with Sid's crew of deformed and mismatched toys to rescue Buzz. After a successful escape attempt, the pair track down the moving van with Andy's toys in it, and with the help of the RC car and a rocket, lands safely back in the arms of Andy. For many, Toy Story not only represents the beginning of Pixar, but encapsulates the essence of what Pixar is. It's hard not to admire Toy Story for its creative innovation as well, which was the first ever fully 3D animated film, proving to be the initial trailblazer for a whole genre of film, not just Pixar movies. The music is memorable, the story is fun, but it's the characters, most especially Woody and Buzz, that firmly places the film in the hearts of all, both young and old. Both characters undergo beautiful transformations throughout the movie. Woody must get over his jealousy and in the process finds his best friend, while Buzz must accept the reality that he may not be a space ranger, but there is so much worth in being a cool toy for a child. Toy Story will most definitely stick with us to infinity and beyond. Number 2. Up. Released on May 29, 2009, Up is Pixar's 10th feature film and was directed by Pete Docter, who, as we mentioned earlier in the video, also directed Monsters, Inc. and later would direct Inside Out and Soul. The film focuses on widower Carl Fredrickson and a young wilderness explorer named Russell. Carl sets out to fulfill his lifelong dream of seeing the jungles of South America and completing a promise to his recently passed away childhood sweetheart Ellie. Along the journey, Carl and Russell meet the ridiculous chocolate-loving bird Kevin and the adorable and hilarious dog Doug, who possesses a special collar from his owner that allows him to speak. Later, the group encounters Alpha, Gamma, and Beta and discover the dog's master is actually Charles Muntz, Carl's childhood hero. When they realize Muntz is hunting Kevin, the beast of Paradise Falls, they run for their lives with dozens of Muntz's dogs chasing them. Carl ultimately makes the decision to save the balloon-elevated house over Kevin, who is captured by Muntz. Russell is eventually captured as well, and Carl must rescue both Russell and Kevin along with the help of Doug. After a confrontation with Muntz and a near-death experience, it is Muntz who plummets down to the jungle below after attempting to kill Kevin. Carl becomes the new master of the dogs, and Russell becomes a senior wilderness explorer for assisting the elderly, and is also awarded the grape soda badge by Carl that was given to him by Ellie. Up is one of the more moving Pixar films. The opening sequences are right up there with the final scene from Toy Story 3, or most likely scene to cause an adult to blubber like a baby. There is a reoccurring theme with Pixar, but it does not make it any less true, that its best films have characters that undergo dramatic personal transformations. When we meet Carl, he's a grumpy old man who wants nothing left to do with the world, and only seeks to fulfill his promise to his love he has lost. By the end of the film, we see a man who, primarily due to the sweet-natured Russell, has regained the ability to love and is in search of his next great adventure. Up teaches us what it means to love, and that a love for adventure is not bound or limited, no matter your age. Adventure is out there. Here are some of our honorable mentions that didn't quite make the top 10. Let us know down in the comments which one of these should have been on our list. And check out the link in the description for the full rankings of every Pixar movie. Number 1. Toy Story 2. Released on November 24th, 1999, Toy Story 2 is Pixar's third feature film and was directed by John Lasseter, one of the pioneers at Pixar. Andy leaves for cowboy camp without taking Woody, after he accidentally tears Woody's arm. Later, when trying to rescue Wheezy the penguin during a yard sale, Woody finds himself stolen by the greedy toy collector Al. Buzz and a few of Andy's toys decide to launch a daring rescue mission to bring Woody back home before Andy returns from cowboy camp. Meanwhile, Woody is brought to Al's apartment where he is greeted by Jessie the yodeling cowgirl, Bullseye a loving horse, and Stinky Pete the prospector. They reveal that Woody is a vintage toy who has his own TV show, and that Al intends to sell the four of them to a museum in Japan. Woody somewhat reluctantly realizes that maybe he ought to go to Japan after hearing Jessie's story of her former owner Emily. When Buzz and the toys reach the apartment, they are disappointed to learn of Woody's plan and try to convince him to come back with them to Andy. They leave without Woody, but as they're leaving, Woody ultimately has a change of heart. It is revealed that the prospector is not willing to go, unlike Jessie and Bullseye, and gets out of his box to lock them in the room. Al returns and packs the toys up for the trip to the airport. After being freed from a suitcase, Woody has his arm ripped again by the prospector. When it seems most dire, though, Buzz and the other toys come to the rescue once again, placing Stinky Pete in a little girl's backpack to, as Woody puts it, learn the true meaning of playtime. The gang manages to escape the airport and head home to Andy just in time before his return from cowboy camp, where he is overjoyed to see the new toys as well. Toy Story 2 is widely considered to be one of the best sequels of all time in film history. Even more incredibly, the film was initially not even scheduled for a theatrical release. The story team redeveloped the entire script from the movie in a weekend. The remaining production schedule was compressed into 9 months, which is absolutely unheard of. In our opinion, this is the only Pixar sequel to ever top the original film. The additions of new characters fit nicely into the world of Toy Story and didn't affect the affection for the original characters. The greatest scene of this movie is Woody's realization following Buzz's speech, which culminates with him using a line Woody spoke to him in the first film: "You are a toy." Woody grows to understand that as a toy, you can't stop a child from growing up, but it is that journey and that process that is the precious piece of a toy's relationship with their child, and Woody wouldn't miss that for the world. Check out the videos on screen. Thanks for watching this video. Remember to subscribe and hit that bell to know when the next Today's Rankings video goes live. Leave it a like and comment down below. What do you want to see ranked next? This has been Ben for Today's Rankings. Have a great day.